Welcome to Context. I'm Bakhtiyar Hasanov, and today we delve into US President Donald Trump's recent announcement of the Liberation Day tariffs, a sweeping set of trade measures that have sent ripples through the global economy. To help unpack these implications, we're joined by two distinguished guests, political analysts Joe Weingarten and Michael Hack. Both are joining us from Berlin. Mr. Weingarten and Mr. Hack, thank you for joining us on A News.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Let's begin our discussion. Mr. Weingarten, President Donald Trump has introduced a universal 10% tariff on all imports, with additional reciprocal tariffs on specific countries. Could you explain the rationale between these measures and how they differ from previous U.S. trade policies?
Well, so far, for a long period of time after the Second World War, the United States guaranteed an open trade in the world. They were interested in good relations to other countries, an open policy for trade, and to lower tariffs and questions like that. What President Trump now does is a complete change in the US policy for over decades and will cause big damage to the world economy.
Mr. Hack, with countries like China facing tariffs up to 54%, what immediate effects are we seeing on international trade dynamics, particularly concerning supply chains and global markets?
A measured response, I would expect. It is a shock for everyone that these tariffs came now into place like they are. But on the other hand, it was expected. So there was some lead time to prepare here our value chains. It's something disruptive for the world economy, and this will change our responses here, what we see from economies around the globe when it comes to the reliability of the US economy. At the end of the day, I think you see already pre-designed responses to these measures. You see how industry reacts, and you see also already prepared speeches from leaders around the globe.
So, Mr. Weingarten, analysts predict that these tariffs could lead to a significant tax increase and potential inflation. How might this influence the average American consumer and overall the U.S. economy?
Well, not only the American consumer, but consumers all over the world. I'm sure there will be a reaction by those countries who now suffer under this American tariffs, especially the European Union. There will be a reaction. There will be maybe tariffs on our side as well. And all this will be a bad situation for consumers in Europe, in the United States, and all over the world. What, in my opinion, definitely is sure is that things will be very expensive for the United States. These measures will not be of any success for the United States economy. On the opposite, it will become in a grave situation because of these political matters.
Mr. Hack, as Mr. Weingarten has also mentioned, the EU has expressed strong disapproval of these tariffs, labeling them as illegal and vowing a unified response. What form might this retaliation take, and how could it escalate trade tensions?
Several aspects there. First of all, we see since now a decade, more than a decade, the not ongoing support from the US when it comes to the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and everything and our rule-based international economy. We will see that the European Union wants to strengthen against this rule-based international trade, and we will face here the US with similar tariffs back to sectors where they are harmed. At the end of the day, there will be no winners, but on the positive for the European front is that already our responsible here for the EU Foreign Affairs Services, Callas, already stated that, for example, the defense sector, that Europe should look into more buying within Europe and not to support the large US defense companies anymore. So you will see with that a response, I hope a measured response, not to escalate these conflict, because there are no winners. We need, at the end of the day, to find again common grounds with the US. We were for decades, for nearly a century here, or more than that, allies. So there has to be a kind of de-escalation and a door out again of this spiral of escalation here.
So, Mr. Weingarten, Germany's car makers are particularly vulnerable to these tariffs. How are they preparing to address the potential challenges posed by increased duties on their exports to the United States?
You're right, that is a big problem for all European, especially German car market makers, because the German car industry is very strong and their exports to the United States are important. We saw this coming for a long time, so the companies are prepared in a sense. They build up factories in the United States, also in Canada and Mexico, which we now learned is another problem. We could not predict this very aggressive policy of the United States against the European and German economy, but we will find measures. On the short run, German products, German cars will become more expensive in the United States. But the truth is that American cars are not a real alternative to Mercedes, Audi, and BMW because they are lacking of quality. So the American consumers will pay more to get the same product. There will be no success for the American car industry out of that.
But beyond the automotive sector, German winemakers are also bracing for substantial tariffs. What strategies are they considering to mitigate the impact on their exports?
Well, the German wine industry is not only exporting to the United States. This market is not increasing. We got new other markets in China, in India, in South America. So the diversification of the markets is important for Germany, not only in the wine sector, but there it works very well.
So, Mr. Hack, major tech companies such as Apple rely heavily on manufacturing in countries now facing higher tariffs. What adjustments might these companies need to make in response to the new trade barriers?
I think they are very flexible and they will also adapt to that. That will take time, but since the margin in these sectors is very high, I don't see there an immediate problem with that. You see how Apple already moved out of China, if you name this example. So they are manufacturing now more in India and not that much in China anymore. And they will just simply adjust their value chain there. What is interesting is that, Trump imposed so high tariffs on Vietnam, because Vietnam was kind of the country of destination now for several manufacturers who were based in Taiwan. Because of this conflict around the Taiwan region, they moved more and more manufacturers from the semiconductor field, but also manufacturers like Samsung, etc. They moved into Vietnam for their production. But what happens there now with these massive tariffs which are imposed there? That is something which will possibly break this strong economic growth, what you saw particularly in Vietnam, and they will have to handle that. But on the other hand, they are one of the 5 left communist countries around the world. So I think China, the big brother there, will help. But it is a challenge for them, and particularly for that region there around, and yeah, we will see there a response.
Mr. Weingarten, taking into consideration these tariffs, there is great concern about triggering widespread trade wars. How realistic is this scenario, and what historical precedents might inform our understanding?
Yeah, we'll have the discussion, but it's nobody's interest to have big trade wars around the world. Mm-hmm. So, especially for Europe and Germany, we have to look for new and old cooperations. I think, for example, our situation with China has to be reconsidered. In the last years, we got more and more away from the Chinese economy. What President Trump does now could us bring nearer to China, because we need export markets, and if it's not the United States, then maybe it's China and Southeast Asia. So this is not the time for global wars, it's the war for new alliances.
Mm-hmm. So with the World Trade Organization's role in mediating such disputes, what legal challenges could the United States face, and how might the WTO respond to these unilateral tariff implementations?
The problem what we are facing here is that the WTO doesn't have the court system right now into place. So there will be for sure a process installed, a measure of complaint, but it will stay at the political level right now due to the blocking through the United States here when it comes to the court. We will nevertheless see there a massive political pressure on the US. And this is a kind of an irony of history, because the US was before that installing this WTO process and was a big supporter around that. Right now, on a very short side, the US considers this as a tool to break WTO rules, but in the long run, I think they have to get back to that, because at the end of the day, they are exporting, particularly what you said here, software and hardware, which is in demand around the globe, and they should be. They rely on the trust and on the legal framework the WTO delivers, particularly when it comes also to intellectual rights, etc. So yes, we will have there a strong political reaction there. I think at the end of the day, this could also, let's take it from the positive, it could also have really the debate again in place that we need a WTO, that we need a rule-based international trade. And I think at the end of the day, that could be a very positive kick.
Mr. Weingarten, countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh are facing tariffs as high as 46% and 37% respectively. How might these developing economies cope with such significant trade barriers?
I have no idea, because this makes their products really expensive in the United States. Mm-hmm. That's not a good idea. But we have to keep in mind that those countries are not in the central focus of President Trump. His so-called economical enemies in the first line is the European Union and other strong economic countries. Yet now we have to consider that under normal people, you first start negotiations and then make a decision. With President Trump, it's the opposite. Mm-hmm. He often gives orders, makes decisions, and then the negotiations start. That's his way of deal-making. Seems not to be very fair, but that's the way it is. So now worldwide discussions and negotiations with the United States have to start, and we have to try to things make better as they seem to be now.
So how are political leaders from both parties reacting to these tariffs within the United States?
In Germany, we are united in the way that we do not accept this way. This is a united political position in Germany, I think in all over Europe. So the German government will find its allies in the European Union, and together we will form a very strong answer to the measurements of President Trump.
So, Mr. Hack, looking ahead, what are the potential long-term consequences of these tariffs on global economic stability and international relations?
It will certainly harm the globalization, what we have seen in the last decades. It will lead to more manufacturing and to source more regionally, locally. This is something after the shocks what we had now also with these wars here around Europe, that we will see a trend towards that. The US already implemented that. You see that also with the car makers. Joe referenced that very correctly. You see there already a kind of de-risking in manufacturing, for example, BMW, the SUV models, or Mercedes likewise in the US. So you will see here more local regional manufacturing. So the business model, for example, from China is here massively under attack, being and the manufacturer for the world, and also others like what we named here, Vietnam, etc. What Trump wants to implement here, or what his objective is, to attract this industry back into the United States. And there, I think he will be wrong, because I am not sure if the American society wants to work again in production lines. I think they have another idea how these people want to work. I'm also not sure if they have enough workers in the stricter senses to cover that. So I think it's a very short-sighted idea. It could work. He thinks apparently it would work, but I have there some doubts that this will be at the end of the day successful.
So, Mr. Weingarten, what's your opinion on this question?
I agree completely with what Michael said. It took Germany, for example, decades to build up the car industry that we have. The American car industry is decreasing now for 50 years. Look what happened to Detroit and other cities there. There is no way back. And the American economy is very strong in services, IT services and others. And now they put the tariffs on the industrial goods. Other countries maybe will put tariffs on services. So the whole thing will be a big danger for the American economy, and definitely not a revival of their production.
So, Mr. Weingarten and Mr. Hack, thank you for both for sharing your insights with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for having me.
As the global community navigates these developments, we will continue to monitor and discuss the evolving economic landscape. Stay tuned to A News and our context for more in-depth coverage.